They called it a diplomatic punishment. That's what the Galactic Council named the sanctions, the embargoes, and the public trial Earth was forced to attend. Every representative from every advanced alien species sat in that massive obsidian chamber on Jarthul Prime, passing judgment on humanity like they were some backwater criminals. For what? For fighting back. 1 year before the trial, Earth had defended itself from a mining operation illegally set up by the Tavari Empire, a smug, tentacle-faced race that believed lesser species should be grateful for being exploited. Their machines had begun drilling into the Mariana Trench without warning. No communication, no agreement, nothing. Just giant alien rigs cracking the Earth open like a nut. At first, humans sent warnings, then envoys. Then came the explosions. 3 rigs destroyed. 37 Tavari casualties. And suddenly Earth was branded aggressive, uncivilized, and a threat to galactic peace. In the months that followed, food shipments stopped. Trade partners disappeared. Earth's satellites were accidentally knocked from orbit by cosmic debris. And then came the biggest humiliation: the forced attendance at the Galactic Council's judgment seat. Ambassador Naomi Ressa stood before them, the only human allowed inside the trial chamber. A slim woman with tired eyes and skin the color of rich mahogany, she looked far too human compared to the elegant, glowing forms and hulking beasts that surrounded her in the circle. "You are a violent species," hissed Chancellor Axarith, a floating crystalline being from the Zeln Consortium. His voice echoed unnaturally, like a bell rung underwater. "You are not yet ready for higher civility. Your world shall be contained." Naomi's jaw clenched. Her hands, hidden in her robe, curled into fists. She wasn't angry for herself. She was angry for the children in Nairobi who had no grain delivery that month. For the scientists in Luna's research dome who lost power when their solar arrays were sabotaged. For the millions on Earth living under the weight of fear, starvation, and silence. Still she bowed. "We understand your verdict," she said. "No, you don't," whispered a voice behind her. It came from General Vakor of the Trinlai, one of the Council's military arms. He grinned with tusks showing. "But you will." Earth left that trial humiliated, stripped of trade rights, surrounded by patrol fleets, no ships in, no ships out, and worst of all, broadcast across every civilized planet as a cautionary tale. That was the moment humanity stopped pleading. They started planning. In the bunkers beneath Geneva, in the cyber labs of Seoul, in the deep silence of the Martian colonies, they gathered. Not governments, not politicians, but leaders, fighters, survivors, people with nothing left to lose and everything to take back. One of them was Elias Ward, ex-Special Ops, now labeled a terrorist by the Intergalactic Council. He had one eye, a half-mechanical spine, and a reputation for breaking bones before asking questions. He'd watched his sister die when a council blockade kept her cancer meds from arriving. "You don't keep beating a dog and expect it to stay loyal," he said during the first meeting. "Eventually it bites, and humans, we bite hard." They called their operation Black Ember. Not a war, not a rebellion, a reckoning. Quietly, they began hijacking council drones, spoofing communications, gathering intelligence, rebuilding old weapons the council had banned after humanity's induction into galactic society. Then they started vanishing. Freighters, research ships, scavengers, slipping into the asteroid belts where council eyes couldn't see. Naomi was part of it too, publicly still an ambassador. Privately, she was the voice of vengeance. "You made humanity kneel," she whispered during one transmission. "Now we rise, and you will remember us not as beggars, but as the storm you never saw coming." It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about making them pay. One act of cruelty at a time, The Council had chipped away at humanity's pride, their unity, their hope. And now they had nothing left but rage, the kind of rage that made stars go dark. Space was cold, but rage burned hotter. In the silence beyond Saturn's rings, 3 stolen Tevari scout ships hovered in formation. Painted matte black, their heat signatures were disguised with old Terran stealth tech, the kind outlawed centuries ago. Inside the lead ship, Elias Ward paced like a caged animal. "Are we clear on orbital paths?" he asked, eyes scanning a rotating 3D hologram of the target, a Council communication relay perched on a rogue moon. It was a critical hub for interstellar traffic between the inner systems. Disabling it wouldn't just blind the Council, it would make a statement. "We're synced," replied Lynn Tanaka from the helm. She was young, barely 25, with augmented neural ports lining her neck like silver rings. Born post-blockade, she'd never seen Earth without hunger. 10 seconds to breach window." Elias nodded. "No survivors. Leave the wreckage floating." Nobody flinched. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were reminders that every kick the Council landed came with consequences now. The first explosion came like a heartbeat, silent, then screaming red across the void. The relay's shield dome shattered under the impact of a kinetic torpedo. Then came the rail fire, slicing through metal and flesh with equal indifference. Alarms blared in alien tongues. The station's defense drones scrambled, but humanity had learned. They jammed them, turned their own code against them. Inside the station, screams cut short as gravity systems collapsed. Oxygen vented into space. Bodies, Council workers, mostly Arctai and Jarvan, floated like trash, still twitching. Lynn's voice was calm. "Relay neutralized. Council blackout across 4 sectors." "Broadcast the message," Elias growled. She tapped the console. Across thousands of planets, from core worlds to the edge colonies, holoscreens flickered. A single message appeared in every known language. Humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. This is only the beginning. Panic followed. Council newsnets tried to cover it up, but the footage leaked. Soldiers with Terran features, voice logs in English, the unmistakable brutality of Earth-born anger. On Jar Thol Prime, the Council convened in chaos. "This is terrorism," spat Chancellor Axareth, his crystalline body pulsating erratically. "It's an act of war," thundered Vakor, pounding the table. "They were supposed to be under control," another shouted. But Naomi Reza was calm. She watched from the shadows of Earth's silent seat, still exiled, still voiceless, but no longer powerless. "They're not under control anymore," she said quietly. "You made sure of that." Meanwhile, back on Earth, things were changing. The blockades still floated in orbit, but fewer now. Council ships had started disappearing, their crews never found. Satellites were blinking offline one by one. The sky wasn't safe for them anymore. And in the underground cities, built after food riots turned violent, a new mood had taken root. It wasn't despair, it was fury. People no longer whispered. They trained. They built weapons out of scraps. Kids barely 10 were learning how to jam scanners and disassemble plasma rifles. One girl, Amira Kale, was already known among rebels as the Shadow of Nairobi. At 12, she hacked a Council transport security grid and rerouted it straight into a mountain. No survivors. She didn't smile when she did it. She just asked if it had food on board, and when they said yes, she told them to gather every crumb before the Council could retaliate. There was no innocence left. Only survival. Only retribution. And far away, at the edge of known space, a massive ship was being built. Hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, powered by a stolen quantum core, the resurgence was unlike anything humanity had fielded before. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't pretty. It was a blunt instrument, a ship built to smash through fleets and send a message in wreckage and fire. Elias Ward watched its construction with grim pride. "It's almost time," Lynn said beside him. He nodded. "They've lived with peace too long. They forgot what we are." "What are we?" He turned, face half in shadow. "We are the species that invented war before language. We loved it, mastered it, buried it under false peace until they dug it back up." He paused, staring into the darkness of space. "Now we'll remind them." The Galactic Council, once a symbol of interstellar order, was unraveling thread by thread. Panic wasn't something they were used to. Their rule was founded on cold logic, ancient treaties, and superiority complexes built over millennia. But none of that mattered when communication lines went dark and outposts turned to ash. They had labeled Earth as primitive, undisciplined, predictable. And now, they didn't know what Earth would do next. Meetings ran around the clock in Jar Thul Prime. Military fleets were redeployed, trade convoys rerouted, border worlds braced for attacks from the shadows. Everywhere, whispers of the Terrans spread like wildfire. Some feared them, others admired them, and a few began questioning the Council's righteousness altogether. Back on the dark side of Jupiter's moon Callisto, hidden beneath its icy crust, Elias Ward stood over a table surrounded by holomaps and war schematics. Around him were rebels, defectors, rogue AI tacticians, and even a few non-human allies who had grown disillusioned with the Council's lies. One of them, a four-armed Drexian named Varlock, spoke in a guttural snarl. "The Council's grip is weakening. Already 3 systems refuse to enforce the embargo. If we strike a major core world now, it will break their illusion of control." Elias grinned without humor. "That's the idea." "But which target?" Lynn asked, eyes scanning planetary coordinates. "We could hit something symbolic, like the Academy of Galactic Peace on Lyros, or something strategic, like the drone foundries orbiting Erix 3. "No," Elias said. "We hit their pride." He tapped the holoscreen, bringing up the rotating image of Solaris, a glittering city world considered the jewel of the Council's civilization. Rich, untouchable. Entire generations of nobles, diplomats, and strategists called it home. It was protected by orbital cannons, defense grids, and an elite security fleet. To most, it was suicide. To Elias, it was the point. "We infiltrate. We sabotage their systems from within, and then we make their skies burn," he said. "Let them know that even their safest nest isn't beyond Earth's reach." The plan was madness, impossible even, which made it perfect. A month later, the operation was underway. Lynn, disguised as a cybernetic trade envoy, infiltrated Solaris under a forged identity. Varlock posed as her security escort. Inside the city world's gleaming towers, luxury blinded the eyes. The people there still believed in the Council's version of reality, that humanity was a pest being disciplined, that rebels were just terrorists, that the system was eternal. But those illusions shattered when the power grid failed. The moment the lights died, panic set in, elevators froze, gravity destabilized, automated drones turned on their handlers. Across the main broadcasting towers, Naomi's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "We are not terrorists. We are your reflection. This is the pain we endured. You just didn't feel it, until now." Then the sky turned red. The resurgence arrived through a cloaked slipstream, breaching Solaris's orbital defenses with terrifying speed. No negotiations, no demands, just thunder and vengeance. The first barrage shattered the planetary shield array. The second ripped into the spaceports. Fire rained across towers that had never seen war. Council guards scrambled, civilians screamed. but it was too late. Elias led the ground assault himself, boots stomping over marble walkways stained with smoke and blood. He wasn't here to conquer. He was here to remind them. One council envoy begged at his feet. "Please, please, there are children here. Families. We're not all like them." Elias looked down, eyes cold. "Neither were we." He walked away as the detonations echoed behind him. The resurgence pulled out hours later, leaving Solaris crippled. The city's once proud spires were twisted ruins, its rich elites reduced to dust or dragging the wounded through rubble. The message was clear. Nowhere is safe. Back on Earth, crowds gathered around makeshift screens in underground cities. When they saw the fire consuming Solaris, they didn't cheer. They didn't cry. They watched in silence. Not because they were heartless, but because this was justice, and they weren't done. The retaliation came fast, brutal, precise. Within days of the Solaris attack, the Council unleashed the Purge Protocols, an ancient, rarely used order meant to cleanse rebellious civilizations before they infected others with defiance. No trial, no diplomacy, just annihilation. Their first target wasn't Earth. It was Mars. The Council believed they'd break humanity by attacking its colonies first, cripple the support, demoralize the resistance. But they didn't know what Mars had become during the blockade. The red planet had learned to live on scraps, built cities underground, raised children under artificial skies, and taught them that survival was not a privilege. It was a war. When the orbital bombardment began, they were ready. The Council's dreadnoughts approached with confidence, hurling plasma strikes that vaporized old mining rigs and glassed portions of the Martian crust. But under the surface, buried deeper than even their sensors could detect, were the Ash Wolves, human strike teams that had trained in the dark for this very moment. Captain Aria Devlin led them. She was born on Mars, had never set foot on Earth. Her skin bore radiation burns, and her lungs required filter implants, but her heart? Pure iron. She watched the Council's ships hammer her planet. Then she gave the signal. Within minutes, camouflaged railguns emerged from the crater canyons, locking on and firing with terrifying precision. Human-made fusion torpedoes, cobbled together from illegal tech and smuggled black market parts, burst from hidden silos and found their targets. One dreadnought exploded mid-orbit, its shattered hull raining into the Martian sky like burning confetti. Then the real counterattack began. Mars launched its own fleet, small, fast ships, mostly reprogrammed mining haulers armed with plasma cutters and hacking arrays. They slipped past the chaos, boarded enemy vessels, and turned their own systems against them. By the end of the second day, 3 Council vessels were lost. But the cost was devastating. Entire Martian cities had been leveled, families gone in a blink. The dust storms carried screams and ash across what remained. In one sector, a child was found sitting alone beside a collapsed shelter, his eyes staring at the sky that had tried to kill him. When asked his name, he just said, "I'm Rage now." That became a rallying cry. We're Rage now. Earth heard it. The colonies heard it. Even the rebels hiding in fringe systems repeated it in hushed tones like a sacred vow. Meanwhile, the Council was unraveling faster than it could control. Worlds once loyal started asking hard questions. Why had they lied about Earth's rebellion? Why were so many resources being poured into suppressing a species that, by all rights, should have been crushed a century ago? Why did so many of their own die, while the humans just kept coming back stronger? Some races, quietly, secretly, began supplying Earth with intel. A few even offered weapons. Others defected outright. And through it all, Naomi Reza kept working. Still branded an exile, she operated from the shadows, feeding intelligence to Elias and the Resistance Network. But now, something more dangerous stirred inside her. She had contacts on the inside, allies who knew about the Council's darkest secret, a plan they had developed centuries ago, a final failsafe, the erasure device, a weapon that didn't destroy a planet but erased it, atom by atom, memory by memory. Nothing left, not even history. It had only ever been theoretical. Until now. She uncovered transmissions that confirmed the Council had activated its deployment process. They intended to use it on Earth, to remove the problem completely, like humanity had never existed at all. Naomi stared at the blinking message on her screen. Coordinates, timelines, activation codes. "This is it," she whispered. The Council wasn't trying to win anymore. They were trying to erase the evidence of their failure. But humanity had a final card to play. Not diplomacy, not defense. A counterstrike so vicious, so unforgettable, that no species, no matter how arrogant, would ever think of crossing them again. Naomi called Elias. "We need to launch everything," she said. "Not just ships, not just bombs." He didn't ask why. He already knew. "Time to give them the one thing they fear most," he said. "What's that?" He smiled, eyes burning with fury. "Human history." It was called the Vault. Buried deep beneath the ice oceans of Virex 7, the Galactic Council's most classified installation sat like a dormant god, silent, invisible, and deadly. No records of it existed in public databases. Only the highest-ranking Council species even knew it was real. It was here that the erasure device was stored, under biolock, time-gated encryption, and a kill switch capable of destroying half the star system if anyone tried to force entry. And now, a team of humans was about to break in. Elias Ward stood in the dim light of the Phantom Wraith, a prototype stealth ship so advanced it shouldn't have existed. It was powered by stolen Tevari Matterfold drives and shielded by tech reverse-engineered from the Council's own cloaking arrays. A small crew of 20 sat ready, each one handpicked from the most lethal corners of Earth's rebellion. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet resolve. Lynn adjusted her gear, double-checked the fusion blades on her hips, and looked over at Elias. "Even if we get inside, we can't just disable it. They'll rebuild somewhere else." Elias didn't look at her. "That's why we don't disable it." She blinked. "You mean, we set it off," he said, voice calm. "Here, on Virex 7, let it wipe itself out. The Council loses its trump card and a big piece of its soul." There was silence, and then, one by one, the crew nodded. They understood. It was suicide. But humanity wasn't afraid to die anymore. Not if it meant making history that couldn't be erased. The Phantom Wraith slipped past the outer planetary defenses like smoke. Inside the vault's perimeter, drones hovered silently beneath the waves, scanning for signs of life. But the human ship deployed organic decoys, genetically engineered aquatic beasts that drew attention just long enough for the real team to breach. Elias, Lynn, and Varlock led the infiltration. The interior of the vault was a twisted marvel, alien metals fused with pulsating neural wiring like a living organism wrapped in concrete. At its heart, the erasure device sat on a raised platform suspended in magnetic stasis. It looked like a frozen star, bright, humming with power, and impossibly beautiful. And surrounding it, rows of cryopods. Each one held Council scientists in deep stasis, witnesses, custodians of oblivion. "Do we kill them?" Lynn asked, already drawing her weapon. "No," Elias said, pulling a data drive from his pack. "We let them wake up. We want them to watch." He connected the drive to the erasure core. Naomi had embedded a virus, coded in human memory patterns, that would not only trigger the device's implosion, but also embed every Council system with the message. You erased our rights, our homes, our future. Now watch us erase your gods." As the countdown began, alarms flared across the vault. The scientists stirred. Defensive turrets dropped from the ceiling. Sirens screamed in 16 languages, but it was already too late. The humans had uploaded the virus and activated the failsafe. The vault was now a bomb. Elias turned to the team. "Extraction route Omega." Go they ran, dodging plasma bursts and collapsing tunnels. The vault's AI was going into meltdown, trying to override the erasure trigger, but Naomi's code held firm. In 30 minutes, it would all be gone. As they reached the ocean's edge, the phantom wraith rose to meet them. Scorched, half-damaged, but alive. They escaped just as the vault imploded. It wasn't an explosion. It was absence. The entire installation folded inward, then vanished. No debris, no radiation, just silence. All across the galaxy, Council command channels erupted in panic. Their mightiest weapon, gone. Their records of control, their data on Earth's rebellion, their long list of classified threats, wiped clean with it. They tried to cover it up. But it was too late. Within days, resistance movements rose on a dozen Council-aligned worlds. The illusion of the Council's invincibility had cracked. And for the first time in centuries, their enemies weren't afraid. They were angry and united. The Council had always believed in control. Not peace, control. Their entire empire ran on the illusion that order came from obedience, that fear bred stability, and that rebellion could be erased with overwhelming force and a few censored histories. But when the vault vanished, when their own device was used against them, something far more dangerous than rebellion ignited across the stars. Inspiration. It started with the rim worlds. Systems that had been taxed, policed, and silenced for centuries rose overnight. The mining colonies on Velar 9 seized their overseers. On Talax Prime, workers dismantled the Council's propaganda towers and replaced them with crude flags bearing the words, "Never again." Then came defections. Ships abandoned their posts. Captains disobeyed direct orders. Whole planetary militias once loyal to the Council broadcast messages of support to Earth. The Galactic Council, in desperation, enacted the Unity Protocol, a last-ditch effort to preserve their dominance by forcing all remaining member worlds into a single war front. One banner, one army, one goal, the total destruction of Earth and any species aligned with it. They named it Operation Final Dusk. The largest fleet in galactic history began moving. A wall of warships, dreadnoughts, troop barges, and planet killers stretching across systems. It would take weeks to reach Earth's orbit. Elias Ward didn't wait. In a hidden bunker beneath old Chicago, now a fortress of data and steel, he stared at the holograms of the approaching fleet. Thousands of blinking icons, each representing death. "This is it," Naomi said quietly beside him. "We've poked the dragon too many times. Now it's awake." Elias shook his head. "Number, this isn't a dragon. Dragons have pride. This question mark. This is a dying god clawing at its tomb." They had only days to prepare. Earth's surface defenses were still patchwork. Missile platforms, cloaked railguns, EMP towers, most of it built from salvaged Council tech. But Elias had one thing they didn't. Unity. He called in every favor. Every ally. Ships from the Martian Resistance, stealth bombers from the Saturn Syndicate, pirate crews from the Andromeda Expanse. Even a few Tavari engineers, once enemies, arrived with experimental plasma cores to supercharge Earth's grid. They weren't just defending Earth. They were defending the idea of resistance itself. As the Council fleet crossed Neptune's orbit, human ships rose to meet them. The sky turned into a battlefield of gods. Explosions lit up the void. Hulls cracked. Pilots screamed. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 more flanked behind it with righteous fury. Elias led from the resurgence, now upgraded, scarred, and more dangerous than ever. Varlock manned the main cannon, while Naomi coordinated the defense nets from an orbital station. Then came the turning point. The Council flagship, Judgment's Reach, emerged from hyperspace, 3 miles long, armed with a singularity core. It unleashed a gravitational blast that tore through human lines, swallowing 6 ships in a second. But Earth was waiting. The old space station on Luna, once thought defunct, activated. Its core, powered by a stolen Council AI, Naomi had reprogrammed herself, unleashed a counterwave of anti-gravity that destabilized the Judgment's Reach. In that split second of chaos, Elias ordered every remaining bomber to strike. They didn't hesitate. Humanity's wrath poured into the Council's greatest warship in the form of nuclear fire, kinetic rods, and code virus torpedoes that melted its internal AI. It cracked in half. Then burned. Across the Council's command lines, silence. The unthinkable had happened. Their strongest ship destroyed by humans. Panic rippled through their fleets. Confusion, infighting, and then retreat. The Grand Fleet turned, broken, not by overwhelming force, but by sheer will. Humanity didn't win because it was stronger. It won because it was angrier, because it refused to go extinct quietly, because it remembered every lie, every scar, and every forgotten scream. In the smoking aftermath of the largest space battle in recorded history, Earth should have had a moment to breathe. But peace wasn't waiting in the shadows. Revenge was. The Council's defeat over Earth didn't unite the galaxy. It shattered it. Within days of the retreat, the once mighty Galactic Council fractured into factions. Some begged for negotiation, seeing Earth's strength and public sympathy as a sign to reform. Others, the old bloods, refused to bow. These were the ancient species, the ones who had built the Council from chains and conquest. Their pride had been too deeply wounded. To them, Earth wasn't a threat. It was a stain that had to be scrubbed from history. And they had one last play. A shadow general known only as Koth Zerun stepped from exile. Thought dead after the border purges centuries ago, he had returned with a fleet of mercenaries, ex-Council enforcers, and planetary assassins loyal only to him. He didn't want to restore the Council. He wanted to end humanity, person by person, planet by planet. Elias learned of him too late. Koth's forces struck the outer colonies first, burning human settlements in deep space, assassinating diplomats, planting propaganda across the networks. He called his campaign the Correction. And unlike the Council, Koth didn't care about war laws or rules of engagement. He wanted fear. One of his first messages was a broadcast on all human frequencies. The screen flickered, static cracking. Then the face of an old reptilian warlord appeared, his skin like dried bone, his eyes black and bottomless. You think you've won, but your victory is an ember in a forest fire. I have no council, no masters. I answer to vengeance, and I will teach you, humans, that rage burns brightest just before extinction. He ended the message by executing a group of captured Martian scouts on screen. Slow, cruel, just to send a message. Elias felt that message like a blade through his chest. Naomi responded with silence. But behind the silence, she was building something terrifying. It wasn't a weapon. It was a virus. Not one for machines, but for minds. She called it Project Lazarus. Built from fragments of council tech and raw human emotion, it was designed to infect Koth's command structure, not through code, but through story, memory, symbols. It spread through visuals, through old war recordings of Earth's survival, through whispers on interstellar channels. It was a digital ghost that reminded even Koth's soldiers what humans had survived. what they'd done to win. And worse, it made some of them question their orders. While Naomi fought in silence, Elias prepared Earth for a second siege. Only this time, the war wasn't coming in neat fleets or predictable patterns. Koth's attacks were random. Guerrilla, dirty, he used suicide pods, sleeper agents, plasma bombs in refugee ships. When he struck Earth, he didn't use dreadnoughts. He used memory leeches, devices that burned out the history archives in major cities, deleting human records, erasing family trees, even war logs from the Great Battle. It wasn't about killing humans anymore. It was about erasing what made them human. In one assault, an entire museum in New Tokyo was wiped clean. Paintings gone, voices gone, names gone. But one janitor, an old man named Yuto, survived. When Elias found him sitting among the ashes, still clutching a scorched datapad, he asked him why he hadn't left. Yuto simply said, "If they erase the stories, they erase us." I stayed to remember. Elias took his words and made them a banner. "We stay to remember." He painted it on ships, uploaded it into firewalls, embedded it in code. And humanity, tired, bleeding but unbroken, began fighting back again. Not just with guns, but with memory, with art, with defiance. It began with silence. Not the comforting silence of peace, but the sharp, cold quiet of anticipation, like the breath just before a scream. Koth Zerun had come to finish what the Council could not. He descended upon Earth with his Nightborn armada, a fleet made from the bones of conquered ships, each vessel radiating stolen energy from obliterated civilizations. No rules, no broadcasts, no demands, just death. He didn't seek surrender. He sought extinction, but he miscalculated. He thought humanity would fight like before, with desperation, grit, and outdated weapons fueled by vengeance. He expected stubborn survivors, cornered and angry. He didn't expect Earth to evolve. Elias Ward stood on the command deck of the Resurgence, not in armor but in black, mourning, not for what had been lost, but for what they were about to become. Behind him stood Varlock, scarred and unshaken, and Naomi, who had long since stopped smiling. They weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to become unchainable. Naomi's virus, Project Lazarus, had reached its final stage. No longer just infecting systems, it was now embedded in the minds of soldiers, rebels, civilians across the galaxy. It carried memories of Earth's fall, its rise, its fury, and it passed from being to being like wildfire. It didn't kill. It woke people up. When Koth's ships entered Earth's orbit, expecting a fractured world, they found a unified defense grid channeling energy from every colony. Mars sent kinetic warheads. Europa fired plasma spears. Titan, once silent, erupted with electromagnetic javelins that pierced Koth's cruisers. But that was just the prelude. Elias activated the final phase of Naomi's plan. The Mirror Core. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a psychological AI that reflected back every command Koth gave, twisting his own orders into doubt among his troops. Soldiers began hearing alternate commands. Ships were split between conflicting directives. Chaos took root. Inside the Nightborn armada, captains fought each other, unsure who truly led. Koth's fury echoed across all channels. "You mock war with tricks and riddles. Come face me like a soldier," Elias answered. The Resurgence broke through Koth's line, flanked by retrofitted rebel cruisers and drones controlled by children on Earth who had grown up learning war like math. They didn't fire first. They let Koth come. His flagship, the Bleeding Maw, locked onto the Resurgence, one final duel. But Elias didn't fire a single shot. Instead, he opened a channel and played Yuto's recording. The old janitor, his voice rough, trembling, speaking over ashes. You can kill a man, burn a home, erase a name, but you cannot destroy memory. You cannot end what refuses to forget. And then Elias spoke, quiet but unflinching. We don't need to win, Koth. We just need to make sure you're remembered as the last tyrant. And we? The last species you underestimated. Naomi hit execute. The virus spread, not into ships, but into Koth's personal neural core. The AI assistant in his own brain, once loyal, began replaying every atrocity, every scream, every erased world he had destroyed. Koth screamed as he lost control of his own mind. His ship powered down, and Earth, without mercy, opened fire. The bleeding maw exploded into a silent, brilliant storm of white light. The war was over. Not because the enemy had surrendered, but because they no longer had the will to fight. Years later, statues would be raised, not just of Elias, Naomi, or the fallen, but of children who coded defenses from bunkers, of elders who taught history under bombardment, of the nameless who kept stories alive. Humanity wasn't remembered for its violence. It was remembered for its rage. Unbreakable, righteous, and pure. When the Galactic Council tried to erase Earth from the stars, humanity didn't just fight back. It rewrote the ending and made sure everyone remembered forever.